Welcome to Sit Down News. I'm going to today speak about part three of the brains behind the Gotti crew, Tony Moscatiello. Back then, there was an FBI investigation that was targeting the Gotti crew for narcotics trafficking. And at some point, it became apparent that a handwritten affidavit was missing. So it was an affidavit that the FBI created themselves, and specifically, the document was an authorization paper to put the bug in Angelo Ruggiero's house in Cedarhurst, Long Island. And it became disclosed that a high echelon informant found out where he thought that the paperwork could be, and consequently, they conducted a raid on the home of Tony Moscatiello in Howard Beach. You hear me say Tony Moscatiello because his name is Anthony Moscatiello. Guys called him Tony. And as you know, in Italian, a lot of times we chop up the last name, especially in the street. And he was known as Tony Moscatiello. So anyway, they went to Tony's home, and they went with a warrant under the guise that they were looking for these stolen guns. And they not only found, I think they found a few Walter PPKs, handguns, they also found the missing document. And I remember when that was taking place, he was not too happy about that and that they found it, but obviously he denied any knowledge of the existence of anything that was found. And they found it, I believe, in his basement up in the ductwork. They unwrapped ductwork and they found it. They found it there. And Tony obviously phoned his attorney, which also was my attorney when I was in trouble in '89. So the FBI knew that there was a mole. There was someone who was feeding, obviously, Tony Moscatiello and other guys information, because obviously, how did he wind up with this paperwork? It was the original paperwork too. And suspicion pointed to one of their own former agents, a guy by the name of Richard Taus. And Richard Taus eventually gets accused and convicted of child molestation with kids from a soccer team. And importantly, despite the evidence that was found in Tony's house, he legally beat any charges that were brought forth against him. He also was involved in a case that involved diamonds. He was a co-defendant on a case that involved diamonds. I don't really remember what the case was about, but I remember that he was part of the trial. And during that trial, his name hardly came up. So he had this big trial, and he's one of the co-defendants that is sitting at the defense table. And the jury is hearing witness after witness and testimony after testimony, with Tony Moscatiello's name never really being mentioned. And not surprisingly, Ed Schulman, the lawyer, during his summation, basically told the jury, I don't even know what my client's doing here, which was a perfect defense, because the jury themselves sat there listening and never really heard his name came up for some reason. I don't know why they never brought his name up during the trial, but that's how he winds up getting acquitted on that diamond case. You know, aside from having a business side to him, and he was mostly strictly business, he also had a violent side to him if needed to be. One such incident involved his family had placed an order for dinner at Gino's Pizzeria, which is on Cross Bay Boulevard in Howard Beach. And after waiting, I think, for over an hour, one of his daughters called up the pizzeria to ask, like, what's going on with our order. Whoever the guy was that answered the phone got disrespectful with her, answered her obviously unprofessionally, and definitely made a big mistake. The daughter, in turn, told her father, Tony Moscatiello, and he took off over there. Heard he walked into Gino's with a baseball bat. And he announced, because he didn't know which guy said it, there was a whole bunch of guys working at Gino's at the time. He didn't know which one of them answered the phone, but he basically said that if anybody ever disrespects his family again, he's going to wind up cracking the head open with the baseball bat. He told me the story, and usually that was kind of out of character for him, but I guess he was not too happy about them disrespecting his daughter. In the blog, I wrote, because it's a fact, he didn't have his family go back to Gino's no more, so they favored New Park, which is up the block. And actually, I like New Park pizza better than Gino's myself. Another incident took place also on Cross Bay in Howard Beach. And there used to be a restaurant called Tony Roma's. It was a rib, like a spare rib type of place, among other things you could get there. It was a good restaurant. And coincidentally, the owner, who has passed away since, goes by the name Joe DeCandia. Joe DeCandia was a Lucchese associate back then. And Tony was in Tony Roma's, and he was walking past the bar section, and there was a guy sitting with some stewardess there. And the guy looked him up and down and looked at him, and Tony told me, he says, he seen the guy looking at him, and he looked, and he kept walking. And then he heard the guy start whistling the theme to The Godfather. And he took it as such a disrespect, especially in front of all these women. And the guy was trying to mock him. Tony made a telephone call, and he had another guy come and meet him there. And they went back into Tony Roma's, and he grabbed the guy and pulled him off of the bar, right off the bar stool. And he took out his revenge on him making that foolish mistake of whistling like that. I had wrote in the blog that after this incident took place, every so often I would whistle that tune myself to him, and he would get very aggravated by me doing that. During the summer of 1989, I got myself involved in a serious case. I became a fugitive to law enforcement, which on part 4, which I'm almost done writing, I just want to finish it up. I go more into that a little bit in detail about me and Tony Moscatiello and hiding from law enforcement and how he helped me. But as I mentioned on part 3 here, my co-defendant, Michael, he was given the nickname